Alright, what is up, you guys? I am here with the top 10 worst WWE pay-per-views of the decade. This was an extremely easy list to make because the 2010s have been absolute shit for WWE. I've hated this decade for the most part, but once in a while you did have a few gems. And then the other times you had shit like we're about to talk about. So, let's start off with number 10. Hell in a Cell 2019. So here's the thing about this pay-per-view. The pay-per-view itself is mediocre. You had a good Hell in a Cell match with Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch. And, you know, this is more well-known for the ending. I'm sure there's people who want me to rank it higher just because of the ending, and I'm not going to do that. You know, this is a list for pay-per-views as a whole. But this pay-per-view does deserve to be on here because it is the worst ending I've seen in a long time to any pay-per-view. It rivals Victory Road with Sting and Jeff Hardy. Next up, we have WrestleMania 27. Not my least favorite WrestleMania of all time. We will get to that, though. You know, this is up there with, like, WrestleMania, I don't know, probably like WrestleMania 9, you know, 9, 11. I think 11's the worst of all time. Some people will say 9. I'd say this is up there, but it's not the worst. And, you know, it's mostly just because it doesn't feel like a WrestleMania. It just kind of felt like a counterpart to WrestleMania 28. So it just, I don't know, it didn't feel like a satisfying pay-per-view as a whole. And then your main event was John Cena versus The Miz. And I like both of them, but at the time it just wasn't a main event to WrestleMania. And it was clearly just there to set up The Rock and John Cena. You have Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler, which is an embarrassing, like, 20 minutes. And then Snooki also appears on the card. Enough said. Next up, Capital Punishment 2011. This has just become historic in terms of how bad this is seen. You know, you have, you know, matches like Evan Bourne versus Jack Swagger, Big Show versus Alberto Del Rio. You do have Randy Orton versus Christian. That's really the only highlight on the card because they had a great rivalry going on at the time. Phenomenal rivalry. And then that's your main event. R-Truth and John Cena right there. So, you know, it was a cheesy one-off pay-per-view. It's obviously just a transitional pay-per-view to get to the Big Four, but whatever. It's watchable. It's not as bad as quite as everyone says it is. But it definitely deserves to be number 7 on the, or 8 on the list. Okay. Next up, we have WrestleMania 29. This one was just, how do I put this? It's not disappointing because the card wasn't great to begin with. It's just more of a letdown for the WrestleMania name. And, yeah, I'm still pissed that we got Twice in a Lifetime, The Rock and John Cena. Yeah, just fuck once in a lifetime, I guess. And then, you know, you have fucking your World Heavyweight title match, Jack Swagger and Del Rio, which they're both good talents, but I wouldn't say WrestleMania mid-card talents. You have Fandango versus fucking Chris Jericho. The only highlight on the card, to be honest, is CM Punk versus The Undertaker in one of The Undertaker's best WrestleMania matches. And, yeah, that's it. There's really, literally nothing else redeeming about this pay-per-view. It had a cool set, but that's about it. Triple H versus Brock Lesnar was a huge letdown. I was excited for that match. I really was. Okay. Next up, we have, let's see. Yeah, Super Showdown 2019. So, Super Saudi shit show, as I like to call it. This was basically a typical Saudi Arabia show. I mean, what more do you need in terms of context? Triple H and Randy Orton had a decent match. The Battle Royal was somewhat enjoyable. But then you had shit like The Undertaker versus Goldberg in the main event, which was by far the worst fucking match of 2019. That was embarrassing, okay? I'm not a Goldberg fan, but I'm an Undertaker fan. So this was just bad. This was just bad in every way possible. I didn't even review this pay-per-view. I really did not want to watch this. Andrade versus Finn Balor was actually pretty good, though. But this is basically the pinnacle of a house show. That's really it. And then next up, this is number 5 on the list, but it's my least favorite pay-per-view of the decade, and my least favorite WrestleMania of all time. WrestleMania 32. Never thought I'd see the day where I'd rather watch WrestleMania 11 than this. It's not worse than WrestleMania 11, but from a personal standpoint, from a biased point of view, I'd rather watch WrestleMania 11. Because at least that's only like 3.5 hours of nonsensical bullshit. Whereas this is literally like, counting the pre-show, 6 hours of absolute hell. Yeah, what do you even say about this piece of shit? Undertaker versus Shane McMahon. A promising Hell in a Cell match. I was excited for that. I was always a huge Shane McMahon fan. I loved his early 2000s work. I absolutely loved him. And this was just bad. This Hell in a Cell match was dragging. I think it was like 30-some minutes long. It was just bad. And literally a great storyline was just turned into trash by having Undertaker win clean. So, the main event was Triple H versus Roman Reigns. Nobody wanted to see that match. You had one good triple threat women's title match. That's about it. Everything else on here, it's more booking was the problem. Like Chris Jericho and AJ Styles. Decent match, but Chris Jericho I don't think should have won that. And Zack Ryder winning the United States title. Or no, I think it was the Intercontinental. We're going to look. Yeah, we're going to look. I don't want to get that wrong. That's how much I hate this pay-per-view. Yeah, Intercontinental. I don't know why. For some reason, I always think it's United States. So, yeah, it's a good win for him, but did they do anything with it? No. He lost it immediately after. God. Yeah, I hate WrestleMania 32, but it's not the worst pay-per-view. Number 4, SummerSlam 2010. My least favorite SummerSlam of all time. Yeah, you have Alicia Fox versus Melina. Let that sink in. Big Show versus Straight Edge Society. Dolph Ziggler and Kofi Kingston. Sheamus versus Randy Orton for the 10,000th time. Because that's a really exciting match. And then we have Kane versus Rey Mysterio. And of course, Team WWE versus Team Nexus. You all know how much I love the Nexus. Yeah. Even the DVD cover perfectly states how bad this pay-per-view is. This pay-per-view single-handedly made me stop watching wrestling for 1 year. Okay, next up, a pay-per-view I almost went to, and I'm glad I didn't. I almost went to WrestleMania 29 as well, and I'm glad I didn't. Battleground 2017. This was embarrassing. A lot of people thought that this, that 2018 and 2019 could not top how bad this pay-per-view was. Boy, were we wrong. But, you know, you have Rusev and John Cena in a very boring, kind of dragging flag match. I never liked flag matches. We had the Punjabi prison match with Great Khali thinking he won and holding the title up. Everyone wanted Great Khali to come back. I don't know about you guys, but phenomenal. But yeah, Randy Orton and Jinder Mahal, that's one of the worst main events. Probably the worst main event of 2017. I can't think of anything worse. So yeah, it's just an all-around bad fucking pay-per-view. Next up, I honestly didn't think it would get worse than this. But once again, boy was I wrong. We have Backlash 2018 at number 2. This was miserable. I watched this all the way through live. This was miserable. This was a horrible experience. This is when they went back to the dual branded pay-per-views, which once again I thought was a mistake. But yeah, we have Nia Jax versus Alexa Bliss. We have Roman Reigns versus Samoa Joe in the main event, which doesn't sound bad. I love Samoa Joe. But it was just a bore fest with people chanting "beat the traffic" and leaving early. The one good match on the card, and I mean that, the one good match on the card was the opener, Seth Rollins versus The Miz. Went downhill from there. AJ Styles and Nakamura had another entry in their disappointing rivalry with a huge fuck you ending. And then we had Big Cass versus Daniel Bryan. Clearly main event material. But what could be worse than all that, you say? Crown Jewel 2018. So bad that it wasn't released on DVD. Crown Jewel 2019 was awful. But 2018's Crown Jewel was way, way worse. You had the awful tournament won by Shane McMahon. The Best in the World Cup. Ooh. And then we had, you know, Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar in just an awful squash match for the Universal title. And after fans were so happy Brock lost the belt at SummerSlam, I was there. People were happy at SummerSlam when he lost. He just wins it back. And then, of course, you have the biggest fuck you of the decade, Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement, DX versus the Brothers of Destruction. This was awful. Yeah. So, yeah. It's pathetic how easy this list was to make. It took me like a half hour to put together the best pay-per-views of the decade, which isn't good. That's not a good thing. It shouldn't be like that. But, you know, this was the worst list. If you'd like to see more lists, let me know. For now, this has been the DVD Freak. Peace out.